Hello, my lovelies. So what we're going to look at today is solving equations. I am assuming at some point you guys have seen this, but I'm still going to go through it, just going back over all those details, whether you remember or not. Even if you remember, still helps to see it, refresh the memory. Maybe you'll pick up a couple of hints or tips for the future. So in chapter 4, you're going to have now questions that ask you for, like, what does the initial principle need to be? So in order to solve for that, we technically have an equation we can solve. So that's one of the reasons I'm going over these. So an equation is a statement that indicates two quantities are equal. All equations have an equal sign. Anything with an equal sign and something on both sides is an equation. A solution to an equation is the value of the variable that makes the equation a true statement. So it's a number that works in place of the variable. That is talking about single variable equations. To check a solution, replace the variable with the value and verify that when it's simplified, the right side equals the left side. All right, so on the homework, you'll probably have one or two of these, hopefully only one or two. Determine whether the given number is a solution to the equation. So they give us the equation 9x minus 7 equals 38, and then a comma and a space, and then 5. So what they are saying is, or asking, is x equal to 5? Is 5 a solution for this particular equation? Now, in order to figure that out, we're just going to substitute 5 in place of the x. So I'm going to write down everything except where the x goes. And now we'll just put a 5 in there. And now we're just going to work it out, order of operations. So 9 times 5, multiplication before the subtraction. So that is going to be 45 minus 7. And so 5 and then 2 more is 38. So 5 is a solution. 5 is a solution. Now, let's see what happens. I bet you know what's going to happen, but let's see what it looks like when it happens. So the -8, the parentheses, add 35 to that, and we're going to see if we get -9. Don't. But y'all knew that. All right, 8 times 7, that favorite last math fact is 56. 5, 6, 7, 8. But negative, so -56 plus 35. All right, so 35 positives cancel out 35 of the negatives. So I subtract those 35 off, and that leaves me with 21 negatives. This is not a true statement. This is false. So that tells us that 7 is not a solution. Okay, so that's what our answers are for that type of question. Is it a solution? Is it not a solution? And I think it even gives you, it's just like 2 little bubbles, and they might even give you several numbers to check on the same equation. Now, one of the common confusions when we start solving these is it an expression or is it an equation? So an expression, which is everything we were doing in the combining like terms section, can be simplified. If they give you a value for the variable, you can evaluate it, but there is no equal sign. Now, sometimes in our work, we might write equals on the next line and then continue the work. But what we're saying is I started with this and then I made a change and got this, but they are still the same. but it is not an equation that we can solve and get a solution. So if it doesn't start with an equal sign, it's an expression. Unless they tell you to set this expression equal to something. Equations have an equal sign. We can isolate the variables on one side of the equation, find the value of the variable that make the equation true. All right, so check it out. Over here on the left, 5x plus 7 minus 2x plus 20. So certainly I could move stuff around, combine like terms, but there's no equal sign. I cannot solve for x here. I don't know what x is because I don't know what this is supposed to equal. But on the right here, I have the same thing equals 45. That I can solve. There is at least one value of x that should solve that. It's probably only one value. Most equations, linear equations, when we don't have crazy exponents, have one solution. All right, so check out 2 here. Identify each as an expression or an equation. I say it like that, equation, equal. That's why we use those. So where do I see equals? There it is. Nope, there it is. Alrighty, so we have equation, expression, equation. I don't even really care what is on either side. Just care that there's an equal sign and there's something on both sides. That makes it an equation. All